Yoga as a general subject is known to most people today. In the elite society, yoga is a subject discussed widely. Yoga acharyas with yoga centers are coming up unabated in most places. Yoga also is becoming overly institutionalized these days. I'm afraid in the process of its relentless growth, the ancient roots of yoga has now been replaced by several of its modern manifestations. There are two things that we should be clear about the yoga. Firstly, yoga is a spiritual exercise. Secondly, yoga is basically linked with Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma. In Hinduism, yoga is a word that has been primarily used to explain every spiritual union. Yoga as a word is also used as Vidya. Vidya is information on every branch of knowledge. Today's study is all about one particular but very prominent branch of yoga, the Hatha Yoga. Subject is the Hatha Yoga, its history and development. Traditionally, Hatha Yoga is a very specialized field consisting of a variety of yoga practices. But in its entirety, it gives great emphasis to the physical methods of achieving health and longevity, though spirituality is its ultimate purpose. During its initial stages, the Hatha Yoga exercises were not accepted by the orthodox Indian traditions. But over a period, this view has been changed. Hatha Yoga was accepted and appreciated as a key area of practice over 1,000 years itself. But for several reasons, even now, Hatha Yoga as a subject has been poorly researched and studied. One of the reasons perhaps for this is the basic text of Hatha Yoga is in Sanskrit, which is not a popular language today with the masses. There are three important Sanskrit classical texts explaining Hatha Yoga: the Shiva Samhita, the Hatha Pradipika, and Garanda Samhita. These are the three basic books of Hatha Yoga. There again, these texts provide only a limited view of the tradition of Hatha Yoga. Of course, they do contain most of the information related to yogic exercises. In later days, a lot of other works surfaced, providing a better and bigger picture about this field of the yoga. Hatha Yoga is basically a combination of two yogic methods. One of these can be traced from the practices of ascetics who are referred to in the two great Sanskrit epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. References about such ascetics are also found in the Pali Buddhist literature. The second of the two can be traced from the entourage of Alexander of Macedon, who is said to have encountered a group of ascetics at Takshila during the end of the 4th century BC. They speak about certain ascetics holding difficult postures and also practicing extended breathing exercises, mudras, etc. Such information confirms that the yogis of India nurtured innumerable yogic practices from time immemorial. We got to know also that these ascetics at first trained themselves to still their minds. Thereafter, they focused their attention to liberate themselves from the cycle of birth and death through tapas or austerity. These are the earliest informations that we have on the yogic practices. Having referred to tapas, let me explain in a nutshell what it means. Tapyate iti tapaha. Tapas is a difficult inner experiment. It simply means burning, innerly feeling burnt up. Burning of what? Burning of desires, burning of all unwanted accumulations, both in the body and the mind, through various purificatory methods. Tapas has been a practice in the Indian society right from the Vedic times. Tapas has various aspects associated with both physical and inner energies, associated with Tejas and Ojas. And therefore, in the field of yoga, it is basically associated with restraints and celibacy. In fact, both initial practices known as yama and niyama in yoga aim at developing in the practitioner a positive attitude towards this tapas. The intent of practices of yama, niyama, asana and pranayama in particular, when combined with certain knowledge that has come down to us through the earlier referred ascetic traditions and the physical yoga systems as practiced today, makes for a perfect formalized yoga practice. In person, I would also suggest a certain amount of tantra into it. In fact, the flourishing of tantric schools of India during the first millennium had some yogic contribution too. The visualization-based tantra yoga of earlier times was a combined physical technique of the older ascetic tradition with its own energetic form of tantric worship. A good example of this is found in one of the key techniques of Kechari Mudra. You would have heard of Kechari Mudra, practiced both in Tantra and Yoga traditions. In the ascetic traditions, it is associated with stilling the mind while blocking the fall of bindu by the tongue. You would have heard about this bindu in various places like Lalita Sahasranamam as well as in tantric books. This bindu is said to stay usually in the lower region of our body. Its rising up and traveling through Sushumna to the head is a well-known tantric exercise related to Kundalini Yoga. This bindu is an unusual substance which can drip down to the throat through the posterior soft palate. At that point of time, if it is not handled properly, it is said to drip down to the throat and then to stomach, which is said to cause irreversible effect of old age and death. Hatha Yoga speculates that the head is a storehouse not only to the physical brain but also to several secretory substances like bindu. The yogis believe the bindu to be the amrita or the nectar of immortality itself. A second Kechari Mudra is therefore performed by yogis in order to help flooding of this bindu substance all over the body, helping the person to reverse the aging process and attain longevity. This is, by the way, a reference to tell you how the tantrics have used the Hatha Yoga exercises more effectively in combination with the tantra. During the Kumbh Mela festivals, I have come across some of the Naga sadhus who have practiced such yoga practices in order to attain perfection in both the yogic and tantric pursuits. You will be surprised to know that the Hatha Pratipika, which I referred earlier, teaches the practices of both these Kechari Mudras. To a great extent, this combination of practices is now best represented by the celibate yogis of Nath Sampradaya or the order of Naths. The Nath Sampradaya traces its roots from the Tantric tradition. Its founder Gorakhnath and the later Matsyendra Nath, they have immensely contributed to the growth of today's Hatha Yoga system. Their textual instructions on various methods of cultivating tapas, etc. are of great importance. Several teachings on such matters by Nath and other sampradayas are continued only orally from generation to generation, even to this date. In some of their earlier texts, we can find references of practices particularly suited to householders. Before the 2nd century BC, every yogic and tantric tradition had their own variety of exclusive groups or sects, access to which were only through initiation by a guru. Many such varied practices became obsolete by the 2nd century BC. It is only thereafter most teachings were made open to the public. One group of those traditional ascetics whom Alexander Macedon is said to have met were the followers of Dattatreya Yoga Shastra. This again is one of the earliest texts of the Hatha Yoga, and its followers can be found in many places even today. The Dattatreya group of ascetics represent one of the broad yoga traditions of India. Their teachings have been open to both ascetics and householders. Lastly, I like to mention also about yet another yogic tradition which is said to have originated and appeared outside the Vedic and Brahminical tradition at the ancient Magadha region, which is to the east of present Allahabad. I am not sure if there are any practitioners of this group now. In spite of having such a huge history, Hatha Yoga took a long time to be recognized as a synthesized practice in the field of the yoga. There are several reasons to it, which we may debate on this symposia a little later. Yoga virtually gained a place only after the arrival of the great Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in AD 4th century. Then after the arrival of a book, Sarva Siddhanta Sara Sangraha by name, which appeared in the 12th century AD, Hatha Yoga came to be an established system in the yogic tradition. In the medieval times, the Hatha Yoga used to be referred to as an integral part of the classical yoga of Patanjali. Thereafter, the yogic methods were also integrated with the Vedantic philosophy. Later, as the Advaita or non-dual tradition of philosophy came to the forefront to become the dominant philosophy of the emergent Hinduism, the yoga too was poised to be one of the cornerstones of the Sanatana Dharma. Let me wind up this introductory talk on the Hatha Yoga and its history and development now and wait for your deliberations. Thank you.